Sweet Summer Days is happening now at Whole Foods Market with sales on the juiciest fruits of the season. Organic peaches, organic cantaloupes, blueberries, and strawberries. That's an epic fruit salad. You'll also find sweet sales on fresh Alaska sockeye salmon and halibut and grill-ready fruity marinades. Keep your wallet happy with aisles of savings from $3.65 by Whole Foods Market, like sparkling waters, frozen fruits, and snacks. Sweeten your summer at Whole Foods Market. Terms apply.
To make the most of life, we can't undervalue the importance of sleep. That's why I want to tell you about a fantastic podcast called Get Sleepy. It helps you fall asleep with original stories and meditations. They're captivating enough to grasp your attention and pull you away from your day-to-day problems, yet so incredibly relaxing that you'll have no choice but to fall asleep. There are hundreds of episodes, so you're bound to find something you love and get a good night's rest. Search for Get Sleepy wherever you listen to podcasts or go to getsleepy.com. It's another Q&A edition of Optimal Health Daily, episode 2220, and I'm Dr. Neal Malik. Hey there, happy Friday, and welcome to another Q&A edition of Optimal Health Daily, where I answer your health questions related to fitness, diet and nutrition, and more. You send in the questions, and I answer them for you. And if you do send one in, and you're in the US, we'll mail you a copy of our hardcover workbook. If you're outside of the US, we'll email you a PDF version. So what's the easiest way to send in a question? Just email it to health@oldpodcast.com. All right, and with that, let's hear today's question as we optimize your life. Today's question came via email. Dominic writes, there has been plenty of research about how caffeine affects sleep, but can you explain exactly when, during the day, you should refrain from having caffeinated items like coffee or other caffeinated beverages so that it doesn't affect your sleep? And can you explain why? Thank you for taking the time to send in your question, Dominic. Here's some irony for you. I'm responding to this as I drink my usual cup of black coffee. But for me, that means I'm drinking this cup of coffee earlier in the day. Because as you mentioned, Dominic, caffeine can negatively affect my sleep later this evening. From personal experience, I have found that I'm particularly sensitive to caffeine's effects. If I have a cup of black coffee any time after, say, 1 in the afternoon, it's probably going to keep me awake later in the evening than I'd like to be. Not only that, but negatively affect the quality of my sleep when I eventually do fall asleep, or both of those. So, Dominic, part of the problem with caffeine is that everyone responds a bit differently to it. Whenever I share this story about my body's responses to caffeine with my students, I always have a student raise their hand and pronounce to the class that caffeine has no effect on them whatsoever. Just to contradict me. This happens every semester, almost like clockwork. But something else we have to consider is the more caffeine we consume, and the longer we consume it, the more likely we are to build up a tolerance to it, just like we can develop a tolerance to other substances like alcohol. To help us better understand why all of this happens, let's take a deeper dive into caffeine's mechanisms of action and how they affect the body. First, we've probably heard that caffeine is a stimulant, meaning it stimulates the body. It makes us feel more energized. How does that happen? Well, caffeine makes us feel more energized in multiple ways. One way is that it triggers the body to have a slight fight or flight response. So, after caffeine gets absorbed into the bloodstream, the body has a slight stress response. This means our blood starts to flow a bit more quickly through the body because our heart rate and blood pressure increase. This increased blood circulation leads to the brain being able to think more quickly, our muscles being able to react more quickly and with more force, and so on. That's one effect caffeine has on the body, this stress response. It turns out caffeine also causes the release of fat from our body's fat cells. Now this is usually when people's ears perk up. To help fuel the body's stress response, meaning the fight or flight response I just described, we need an energy source. And as it turns out, the body's cells like to release fat to help supply this extra energy. Now, before we get too excited about this potential for caffeine to be a way to help us burn fat, we were talking about fat oxidation or fat burning versus fat loss. I need to mention that even though the body's fat cells are releasing fat, it doesn't mean we can rely on caffeine to help us shrink any body fat. I know it may sound like I'm contradicting myself here, but bear with me. Yes, caffeine triggers the release of fat from our fat cells. But here's the deal. Whether or not that fat gets used for energy is based on a lot of things, like whether we're actually moving our muscles at the moment, our overall level of fitness, our age, our health history, and so on. So whether or not the fat that gets purged from our fat cells gets actually used for energy is a whole other conversation. And again, we touched on that topic on Monday and Tuesday's episodes from earlier this week. Anywho, back to our story of how caffeine increases energy. So far, we've heard it triggers a slight stress response or fight or flight response. Then, it releases fat from fat cells to try and supply the body with energy to run or fight. Next, caffeine keeps us awake by blocking a specific signal. That signal is the one that tells the brain that we're tired and that we need to go to sleep. So by blocking this signal, caffeine helps to keep us awake. Phew, all right. That's quite a few different pathways that caffeine can make us feel more energetic and mess with our sleep. Now, when is the best time to stop consuming foods or beverages that contain caffeine? Most health organizations say stop consuming caffeine at least 3 hours before bed. But this is a very general guideline. As I shared for me, I really can't have any significant amount of caffeine after about 1 in the afternoon. The reason there's no strict guideline is because, as I mentioned, everybody's different. Everybody's body reacts a bit differently to caffeine, and the body's response to caffeine can change over time too. When we look at how fast a typical adult body degrades caffeine, we see that about half of the caffeine we consume is gone after about 5 hours. But researchers have found that depending on the person, that rate can change from 1.5 to 9.5 hours. That means for some people, the caffeine from 1 cup of coffee can linger in their bodies for most of the day. Let's put it another way. Say someone has 1 cup of coffee at 6 a.m. Their body may eliminate about half of the caffeine from that 1 cup anywhere between 7:30 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. That's quite a range. And again, we're only talking about half of the caffeine being removed by the body. So, Dominic, this is why we have to see how our bodies respond to caffeine. Play around with how your body responds. If you find that 1 cup of coffee or other caffeinated beverage or food keeps you awake, try consuming it earlier in the day or consume less of it. I wish there was a shortcut, but sadly, it usually comes down to simple trial and error. Business owners know that hiring the right people can be a real challenge. Make it easier with Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform helping over 3 million businesses do it all. Attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates. With Indeed's Instant Match feature, over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates the moment they sponsor a job. I especially love that if you invite these or any candidates of your choosing to apply, they are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/health. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/health. Just go to Indeed.com/health and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/health. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Sweet Summer Days is happening now at Whole Foods Market with sales on the juiciest fruits of the season. Organic peaches, organic cantaloupes, blueberries, and strawberries. That's an epic fruit salad. You'll also find sweet sales on fresh Alaska sockeye salmon and halibut and grill-ready fruity marinades. Keep your wallet happy with aisles of savings from $3.65 by Whole Foods Market, like sparkling waters, frozen fruits, and snacks. Sweeten your summer at Whole Foods Market. Terms apply.
Thank you again for the question, Dominic. Now, if you want to send in a question to be answered right here on the show and get a copy of our workbook, you can email one to health@oldpodcast.com. Or if you want to hear your own voice on the podcast, come by oldpodcast.com/ask. Right on that page, you can record straight from your computer's microphone. It's really easy. You can even play back your message and do retakes before sending it in. Or you could do it the old-fashioned way and call in your question. The number is 1-61-I-LOVE-OHD. That's 1-614-568-3643. Thank you so much for doing that. Answering your questions is my favorite part of the show. All right, that's another Q&A edition of Optimal Health Daily. Thank you so much for listening every day and all the way through. I hope you have a great start to your weekend, and I'll see you back here tomorrow where your optimal life awaits.